Hey, picture this. It's a mild spring evening in Corvallis, Oregon, May 6, 1974. You're 20 years old, a college student with your whole life stretching out in front of you. You've had classes all day, maybe some studying, and now you're heading out for something simple: coffee with friends and a hot fudge sundae at the Memorial Union cafeteria. It's only a few hundred yards from your dorm, a quick, safe walk on a familiar campus path. You never make it. This is the full, disturbing story of Ted Bundy's fourth known murder. The abduction, the agonizing journey, the killing, and the discovery of Roberta Kathleen Parks. Roberta Kathleen Parks, Kathy to everyone who knew her, was born on February 27, 1954, in Lakewood, Ohio. She was a young woman who made the journey across the country to attend Oregon State University in Corvallis. At 20, she was living in Sackett Hall, navigating the challenges and excitements of college life in the early 1970s. Friends and those who knew her described a dedicated student who was kind, focused on her studies, and full of the quiet optimism that comes with that age. She had left her home state behind to build something new for herself in Oregon. Like so many young people, she was figuring out who she was and what her future might hold. Classes, friendships, late-night talks, and yes, those small treats like meeting friends for coffee and dessert. Imagine her that evening. She steps out of Sackett Hall just before 11 p.m. The campus is still somewhat active, students coming and going, lights on in buildings. The Memorial Union is right there, close enough that it feels completely safe. She's thinking about the conversation she'll have, the sweetness of that hot fudge sundae after a long day. She has no idea that evil is already watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But to truly understand how this could happen, we have to go back and feel the atmosphere that had been building in the Pacific Northwest in early 1974. Young women, mostly college students with long hair, often described as attractive and intelligent, were beginning to vanish. The cases were scattered across Washington and now creeping into Oregon. Police departments were investigating missing persons reports, but the connections weren't yet clear to the public. Parents were worried. Campuses were starting to issue safety warnings, but life went on. Students still walked to classes, met friends, lived their lives. The fear was there, but it hadn't yet paralyzed the region. It was that strange in-between time where people hoped these were isolated incidents, not the work of one man methodically hunting. Kathy was not the first to disappear in this pattern, but her case would become a key piece in the horrifying puzzle. And on that night in May, the predator had traveled south from his home base in the Seattle area, cruising college campuses, looking for opportunity. Back to that evening, Kathy leaves her dorm. The walk to the Memorial Union is short, roughly 350 yards. She's expected by her friends who are already there waiting. Time passes. She doesn't show. At first, they might think she's running late, maybe got caught up in conversation or decided to change clothes. But as minutes turn into an hour, concern grows. Eventually, panic sets in. Kathy is reported missing. Searches begin immediately on campus and in the surrounding area. Flyers go up. Police question students and staff. But there are no witnesses who can clearly describe what happened. No one saw a struggle. It was as if she had simply vanished into the night air between her dorm and the cafeteria. According to Ted Bundy's own later confession, given in the third person to interviewer Stephen Michaud shortly before his execution, here is how it unfolded. He had been on campus, blending in as a student. He spotted Kathy in the cafeteria area. She might have been sitting there, perhaps waiting briefly or just arriving. He approached casually, sat down nearby, and began talking. He presented himself as a fellow student, polite, articulate, charming. He suggested they go somewhere to get a bite to eat or a drink, maybe a local tavern. Kathy, for whatever reason that night, perhaps she was feeling social or simply polite, accepted the invitation. Once they were outside, and she got into his light-colored Volkswagen Beetle, the mask dropped completely. In a remote enough spot near the campus, he quickly overpowered her. He tied her up. He gagged her. Now she was completely under his control. No one around to hear or see. The charming stranger had become a monster. What followed was a journey of pure terror that lasted hours. Bundy did not stay in Oregon. He made the calculated decision to drive her all the way back north, across the state line, nearly 250 to 260 miles toward his familiar territory in Washington. Think about that distance. In 1974, on nighttime highways and back roads, that drive would take 4 to 5 hours or more. Kathy, bound and gagged in the passenger seat or back seat of that small Beetle, helpless as the miles rolled by. The fear she must have felt is unimaginable. The confusion, the dread, the desperate hope that maybe this was some kind of mistake that would end. During that long, dark drive, Bundy raped her, twice. He maintained total dominance over her. He knew the roads. He knew how to avoid detection. For Kathy, every minute stretched into eternity, the passing headlights of other cars perhaps giving her false hope that someone might notice something wrong. But no one did. Bundy was careful. He was in control. Eventually, he reached a secluded, heavily wooded area he knew well. Taylor Mountain, east of Issaquah, Washington. This remote site, with its thick forests and difficult terrain, had become one of his preferred locations to dispose of evidence. Far from prying eyes, far from roads. There, in the isolation of the mountain, he bludgeoned Kathy to death. Her life ended violently at the hands of a man who had lured her with nothing more than a smile and a few friendly words. Her body was left there in the wilderness. Bundy drove away, returning to his normal life as if nothing had happened. Back in Corvallis, Kathy's friends and family were plunged into agony. Her parents received the devastating news that their daughter was missing. Searches continued for days, weeks, months. Hope faded, but they clung to it. The campus community was shaken. How could this happen so close to safety? Students became more cautious, walking in groups, watching their surroundings. Time passed. Then, in early March 1975, nearly 10 months after Kathy vanished, a group of forestry students made a gruesome discovery while training on Taylor Mountain. They found scattered human skulls and bones in a remote clearing. Investigators were called in. A major search operation followed, involving explorer search and rescue teams. More remains were recovered, skulls and mandibles primarily. Dental records eventually confirmed the identities of several victims. One of them was Kathy Parks. Her skull and mandible were among those found. The damage was consistent with blunt force trauma. Her official identification came a few days later. The horror that had been hidden in the woods was finally brought into the light. The discovery linked her case to others from the region, but it would be years before the full scope was understood. Finally, in the days leading up to his execution on January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy began confessing to dozens of murders. In conversations with Stephen Michaud, speaking in the third person to distance himself, he described Kathy's case in chilling detail. He explained how the perpetrator would approach a young woman in a cafeteria or library who might be feeling lonely or depressed. He would chat, gain trust, suggest leaving for a drink or food. Once in the car, control was taken. He described avoiding public exposure, driving to a remote location, and the acts that followed. For Kathy, he confirmed spotting her in the cafeteria setting, the conversation, the invitation, and the subsequent events of the drive in the mountain. Bundy's words paint a picture of calculated predation. He noted how the victim might accept the invitation because the approach seemed normal and non-threatening. He admitted to keeping control during the long journey. These confessions, given when he had nothing left to lose, finally gave family some answers, though never closure. Kathy Parks was so much more than a number in a serial killer's tally. She was a daughter, a sister, a student with plans and potential. Her family in Ohio, and wherever else they had connections, suffered a loss that could never be repaired. Her sister and parents had to live with the unanswered questions for years. The community at Oregon State University carried the scar of knowing that one of their own had been taken in such a deceptive, brutal way. Even today, her story serves as a reminder of how quickly safety can vanish. Stories like this force us to confront uncomfortable truths. Evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like the friendly guy who offers to buy you a drink or walk with you. Ted Bundy was a master at exploiting trust. He studied his environment. He chose his moments, and he left devastation in his wake. But we remember Kathy. We say her name. We tell her story not for shock value, but to honor the young woman who simply wanted to meet her friends for coffee on a spring night. To remind ourselves to stay vigilant, to trust our instincts when something feels off, to look out for one another. Ted Bundy was eventually arrested, convicted on multiple counts, and executed for his crimes. But the pain he inflicted continues. Kathy's murder was one chapter in a much larger tragedy, but today we focused solely on her life, her final hours, and the truth of what happened. Thank you for sitting with this heavy story and remembering Kathy Parks with us. If these detailed, victim-centered true crime narratives resonate with you, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Drop a comment below. Which detail from Kathy's case stayed with you, or which other specific murder case should we cover next in the series? Share this video with anyone who appreciates factual, respectful, true crime storytelling. Until the next file, stay safe, stay aware, and remember the names of those who were taken.